Congratulations on a decade. A decade!
G'day everyone and welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight. Today's guest has managed to achieve what I've been dreaming of for the better part of a decade. With a very modest budget, he's produced his very own Star Trek fan film. It's called Star Trek Horizon. Check out the trailer.
Horizon. So aptly named, both for its majesty and its grand power.
6 months on a mission to bring back tomorrow on a whim that it might change the tide of the war in our favor.
The issue is the intel that she's brought us. The Romulans are building a weapon of mass destruction 2 light years from Earth.
The Romulan weapon is somehow connected to this planet.
Obviously, this must be stopped at all costs.
All hands, this is the captain. I know that we are preparing to go into a dangerous situation, but we have done the work and we are ready. I couldn't be more proud to be serving with you. All of you. Lieutenant, maximum warp. Why are you so committed to helping us?
When I first saw myself after the procedure, I realized what I alone represented. The annihilation of another people for no reason.
There's a clearing ahead. Romulan warp signatures.
Here we go.
You must hold this location. The future of the Romulan people is in your hands, Admiral. Do not forget that.
Report! We have breaches on decks D, E, and F.
Are you seeing this?
I've never seen this on any star charts.
That's because it wasn't here before.
Betrayed everything that I stood for. Everything that I thought humanity should be. Who we are. What we are. We should never lose that.
There's more at stake than you know.
Tommy, that looks absolutely incredible. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you know, my name is Tommy Kraft. I'm a filmmaker in the Michigan area in the United States. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker ever since I was a kid. That's my thing, when I was little and I saw movies, I was like, that's me. That's what I'm going to do someday. And so before Star Trek, I did a bunch of shorts. And, during Star Trek, I've continued to do freelance work. Like commercials and weddings and stuff like that. But all of it was the end goal of being a director, writer-director. And so Star Trek Horizon was my first feature, and it's quite an undertaking to do for your first feature. But I figured that, having done a lot of shorts and having learned a lot, that, going with something that I'm already very passionate about, Star Trek Enterprise, namely, would be a really great choice for my first feature, because it would give me a support basis that was already built in. It was based on something I already really liked. I had a lot of passion for it. And, doing a fan film also helped me find a lot of interested people that otherwise I wouldn't have had if I was just doing another, nameless Tommy Kraft project. So it's really a lot of it is like my passion for both filmmaking and Star Trek overlapped.
Fantastic. Well, tell us about Star Trek Horizon. What's happening? Where's it set?
Well, the basic gist is that it takes place in the year 2160. So it's during the time of Enterprise, the final Star Trek show. and it's about the war with the Romulans. Enterprise was gearing up to do this storyline when they went off the air, when they were unfortunately canceled. So my approach to the storytelling and to the film was to create a film that anybody could watch and enjoy, but would also close up story threads that were left hanging when Enterprise was canceled. So the plot of this movie is that the crew of the NX-04 Discovery, which is our main ship, has been tasked with bringing back a Romulan defector. And so the movie starts with them bringing her back, and then as the movie goes on, they learn from her, and they get a mission from her, basically, to aid in their fight against the Romulans. And so that takes us all sorts of cool places and interesting things with the storyline.
Tell us about the cast.
Well, the cast are all, well, at least they were. Some of them have since moved away now, because we shot, this movie's been 3 years in the making, but they were all local to the Michigan area. There are, all actors that are pursuing acting, or some of them might just be doing it on a hobbyist level, but they still really like doing it. But, I all found them in the area either through a casting call or, I had worked on another project. For instance, Paul Lang, I've told this story before, the guy who plays my captain. He was in a short film written and directed by Mark Bowers, who is the guy who plays my second in command, Commander Jackson Gates. And I knew Mark because I had worked with him on one of my own projects, or a couple of my own projects previously. So I knew Mark, and then I worked on Mark's project with Mark, which is where I met Paul. And then when I met Paul, for some reason I thought, hey, this guy would be a great captain. Just something about his look and his performance. And so I remembered him. And when I eventually wound up making a fan film, I didn't have plans to at the time. I contacted him and was like, hey, Paul, don't know if you remember me, but I'd like you to be in my fan film. And so that's really the way I met most of the people. Ryan Weber, who's my chief engineer. Again, I've told this before too, but he did his own fan films back in the day. Huge Trekkie. And he saw my casting call and he was like, what? Somebody in Michigan is also making a Star Trek fan film? I have to get on this. And so he got in touch and auditioned, and I loved what he did. And he's, being a filmmaker and Star Trek fan himself, we just instantly clicked. And when the blooper reel comes out, I think you guys will be able to see that because every blooper of his is him making a Star Trek reference pretty much. That's basically the casting process. There was people in the area that I thought, were really good. Just because you're not in LA doesn't mean you have bad actors by any stretch. So I was happy with the people that I cast. And
you've taken a unique approach to the production, haven't you? Not a lot of sets were constructed, a lot of green screen. Is that right?
Well, yeah, because 99% of the movie is CG, is green screen. And so we only have 2 scenes in the final film that were not shot green screen. And so all the sets are virtual sets that were constructed on the computer, and everything was shot in front of a green screen with the actors, acting basically with nothing, and then all composited in later after the fact. And, the simple reason being is that it just wasn't even remotely possible to construct the kind of sets we would need to replicate the sets from Enterprise. They were big, they were complex. There was a very high budget show, even for the time. I think it was actually the most expensive Star Trek show. And so, I knew going in that if I was going to do this, it was all going to be green screen. And so it was a huge learning ground, a huge platform to learn for me, to learn more about visual effects, since I've basically done everything on it. And it taught me a lot. And, hopefully the fact that that you asked, if the sets were constructed or not is a good sign, I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, that leads into my next question. A lot of fan series at the moment are spending up big and doing massive crowdfunding efforts to build true-to-life sets, stuff that recreates very meticulously what we saw on screen. How do you feel about the parallels between those productions and yours?
Well, we did actually do a crowdfunding campaign. We did a Kickstarter, and then we had PayPal donations as well after that. And so what that went to for me was to upgrading, my computer so I could render faster. So for instance, a typical shot on the bridge at 1080p to render that background on the old computer would take, or I guess I'll get the new one first. If we're rendering 1080p, it might take about 40 minutes to render one frame of the bridge, which may seem like a lot. But on, my old computer before I upgraded, it would take 2 to 3 hours for one frame. So what I did with the money I got, which granted was not nearly as much as some of the other ones, was I upgraded the computer. I got new software to aid in the visual effects and put it towards funding for costumes and stuff like that. But, with Axanar and New Voyages and all that, like, to be completely honest, I wish I could have gotten that kind of money. I always would have. I love visual effects, and I think it's a very exciting technology. But of course, as a filmmaker, I'd like to do as much practically as possible. So yeah, if I could have real sets, that would be really, really cool. But I just realized I was never going to be able to get that kind of money, and I wouldn't even necessarily put New Voyages in the same category as Axanar. And I think one of the things that is costing Axanar a lot of money is the fact that they are running it like a real, production studio. And instead of, whereas in my case, and, mine is run like a fan film. I didn't really have a choice in it either, but it's run like a fan film, and New Voyages, I think, is somewhere in between. And so once you take that leap to become a movie studio, you then have to put up the money like a movie studio. And so they're spending all this money on making sets, on building a studio, on paying, construction workers and employees and all that. And so while it would, there's something nice about having a studio and about being able to do that kind of stuff, it certainly is not without its drawbacks either. And, that's the primary difference between what I'm doing and what they're doing, is I would classify mine as much more, in terms of the way it's made anyway, much more of a typical fan film.
Do you think Axanar then blurs the line? They're going too close to that studio model instead of being a fan production?
Well, yeah, I think that because part of it is that, Axanar, having raised somewhere in the ballpark of 1 to 2 million so far, anywhere in between there, I don't know where it is exactly. But for CBS and Paramount, that's chump change. I mean, that's like nothing. They probably pay that much to their lawyers to take on this case, if not more. But the issue, I think, is, a slippery slope issue, possibly. I don't say this from any informed position. I haven't spoken to, anyone at CBS Legal or anything. But if it were my property and my company, I would be worried that now we have a fan film making somewhere in the ballpark of 1 to 2 million and building a studio, which isn't a huge deal. But, maybe a couple years down the road, you have a fan film making 5 million. And then a couple years down the road, 10 million, 20 million, and at some point you're going to lose your own property, because all of a sudden you have these fan projects that are actually becoming studio projects. And so anytime you blur those lines the way that they've become blurred with Axanar, I think is where things start to get a bit iffy. And I don't really think New Voyages or Renegades or Continues have done that, because they haven't approached it like they're forming a movie studio to make movies. They may even have a quote unquote studio of some sort, but it's specifically to make Continues or Renegades as good as they can, and that's it, and then they're done. And so it's just, it's basically a blurred lines issue, in my opinion, once you get to this point where you are no longer a fan film, and now you're a studio film, but you're not actually a studio film either. You're somewhere in between, and it gets to be gray waters, I think.
Yeah, well, I guess CBS really have two options. They can join the fans, or they can decree that no more fan productions or studio productions can be made while making a profit or gathering crowdfunding money or anything like that. For you personally, Tommy, did you have any concerns about releasing Horizon?
Well, first of all, I don't really think it's necessarily that much of a dichotomy, because legally speaking, of course, they're entitled to take on any case that they want. They don't have to take on every fan film. But I'm not too worried about it, because I think that generally speaking, we as fan filmmakers are respect CBS's rights, and the fact that they hold the property and we're not making a profit off of it. And, you know, I've been very clear on all my videos that it's a fan film and that it's my personal passion project. You know, I haven't promoted this as like, you know, this is a studio project made by Tommy Kraft. So, you know, I think in generally the other fan films are too. And I'm not too worried that they'll come after the rest of us. I hope they don't. But it just doesn't seem like it's in their best interest, you know, to do that because you're just alienating more fans that way.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there before. Axanar really was trying too hard. It was becoming this studio production instead of a true fan film. And I think now it's about protecting their assets. The new TV show, the new movie are coming up this year. So it's time to focus on those rather than these massive projects that are gaining millions of dollars of support.
Right.
Fan films are fine, but yeah, like I said, Axanar just seems to be trying too hard to be very professional and not in the true sense of fan production.
Well, and the thing is too, I mean, if you kind of looked at it in a different light, like what if 20th Century Fox decided, hey, we're going to make a Star Trek fan film? And so once you ask that question, you have to, so what is fundamentally the difference between 20th Century Fox as a movie studio making a Star Trek fan film and Axanar Productions or Tommy Kraft or, you know, Renegades or Continues or anything? And once you get to a point where you're a really big studio making a fan film, how are you different than if 20th Century Fox were to do it, if that makes sense? And so I think that's what CBS and Paramount are worried about, that you have something that's building into this like giant corporation that's going to be making money off their product. And by the way, I don't know, I'm not saying Axanar has done that, I don't know, but I could see them being worried about that. And, you know, just to use the 20th Century Fox again example, if you ask yourself what is the difference between a professional studio making a fan film and, you know, some fans making a fan film, and if you find that one group of fans is starting to lean more towards a professional studio, I think that's when you might have some issues.
Now, full disclosure, you have worked on Axanar, haven't you?
I did. I worked on Prelude, their short film. You know, it was a very last minute thing. I did all their green screen and all their virtual sets, and you know, I mean, there was no money involved or anything. I just did it because I wanted to work on a Star Trek project, and it looked like a good project. And you know, to their credit, they flew me out to San Diego to see the premiere of Prelude, which, you know, they didn't have to do and was nice of them. So I can't say that like they've had any ill will towards me. But at the same time, since doing Prelude, which was like, that was 2014, I think, I haven't really talked to them that much. I haven't stayed in touch, and I haven't worked on the new one. So I'm a little bit, you know, out of the loop on the inner workings of their production. And I think since they went to doing a lot of full-scale sets, they didn't need, you know, me to do compositing for them as much anymore, which might be why.
All right, Tommy, thanks so much for your time, mate. What have you got planned in terms of a premiere?
Well, Star Trek Horizon comes out. We're doing our local premiere in Michigan on February 25th at 7 p.m. And we'll be doing the backers who are online. We'll be getting, you know, a YouTube link at the same time. And then the DVDs and stuff will go out to backers around that time as well, but maybe not exactly then. And then the public release will be on Sunday, February 28th. And then that's when anybody can hop on the bandwagon and let me know how much you hate it or love it.
Obviously, as you could tell, that interview was pre-recorded a couple of weeks before the premiere. It is absolutely fantastic, Star Trek Horizon. Tommy has done an awesome job. Mate, I really appreciate you taking some time out, sitting down and having a chat. And thank you to you as well for watching this Trekzone Spotlight. I'm Matt Miller. We'll see you again soon.